Okay, welcome back to Q&A. This is the fourth of 4 videos. The topic is things I learned this Medicare annual election period. If you want to go back, the first one was about the messaging this year I thought was rather confusing. Not from the insurance companies. I thought they were pretty clear, but I thought people, the end consumer, didn't quite have a good grasp of what it was that they actually want their insurance to do. The second video was about telemarketing, which is getting worse. I'm very concerned about that. The third thing was people were enrolling in the wrong plan. You can enroll without us these days. You don't need an insurance broker to enroll you. You need an insurance broker to go over with you what is in your best interest to have. This video, this very last one, is going to get a little bit deeper, and if you're an insurance broker or an insurance agent or a financial planner watching this video, I actually know that I have a fair audience on that are insurance professionals. This one's kind of a little bit more for your end of than anything else. The fourth thing that I learned this annual election period, costs are not going down, but the costs are shifting. So you got to make sure that the costs are not being shifted to you. Here's what I mean by that. And this is actually a little bit more on the Medicare Advantage end of things than on the prescription drug side of things. I'll touch a little bit on how it's happening on the prescription drug side of things, but for the most part, this is a Medicare Advantage issue. So, when a person enrolls in a Medicare supplement, they're enrolling into, they have Medicare paying, if you're looking at Part B, primarily 80% of the bill, with the Medicare supplement coming in, paying usually the remaining 20%. Depends on what plan you've got, but usually that's how, for the majority of people, that's how supplements work. So you have Medicare, you're paying for an insurance plan to basically pay what Medicare does not pay. With Medicare Advantage, you are opting into the insurance company paying instead of Medicare. And they are paying an equivalent amount to what Medicare would be paying. And what that means is you are the Medicare supplement. Your copays that are left over is the remainder of the 20%. Now, this goes back to the very first video that I shot on this. The messaging is getting confusing. Because if you are a consumer and you're watching this and you're saying, well, how can this be? I got the Medicare Advantage plan that says I'm not going, my doctor doesn't have a cost to it. My response to you is take a close look at your summary of benefits. There are costs there. The costs, just because you are getting a free doctor's exam, a $0 copay doctor's exam, or a $5 visit to a primary care doctor, or a $10 lab test, whatever it is, with whichever company it is, that doesn't mean that it's free. And I'm noticing between, as we go into 2019, if I look at the 2018 benefits, if I look at the 2017 benefits, as I go back further, the insurance companies have gotten very good at building a Medicare Advantage plan for you that is actually going to be giving you a very rich amount of benefits. And the things that you are going to ask about, the things that you're going to ask for, are going to show up really very much in your favor. You're going to see a lower cost for a primary care doctor this year than you were 2-3 years ago. You're going to see the cost of a specialist visit holding steady, maybe even going down a few dollars. It's great. The lab test costs with virtually every company that I represent have gone down tremendously to where they're almost free. They used to be $40, $50. The extra benefits or excuse me, not even that. We don't have to go that far. The dental that is thrown in there, it's usually only routine, but I went from maybe 2 companies that had them to about 6 or 7. The 2 companies that are advertising they've got dental are no longer special. I think a lot of these companies have done a great job at shifting these little tiny costs. The problem is they also shifted some of the, they shifted those little tiny costs to them, but they shifted some of the bigger costs over to you. If you take a look at your summary of benefits now, the cost if you go into a hospital today is a lot higher than it was 3 years ago. The cost if you need to have certain kinds of therapeutic services have gone up by, they actually look like a little bit, but they've gone up by more than that. Some of those have co-insurance, which means a percentage, and they held steady. What that means is, let's say a co-insurance is 20% for a particular type of therapy. Now, if it was 20% 3 years ago, it's still 20% today. That could be a lot higher than it was 3 years ago, even if it's 20%, because the cost of everything has gone up in the past 3 years. You know that better than I do. So some of the companies have done a great job at packaging these things up for you so that you have in a lot of cases, a lower premium, lower co-pays on preventative services and basic services, and you even have some extra services, which, you know, is part of the messaging here that I think is great. But they've also shifted a lot of the burden of these higher costs off to you. In addition to that, in a number of cases, your maximum out-of-pocket has gone up. Now, what's a maximum out-of-pocket? There is a point where if you have catastrophic medical costs, the costs will stop and the insurance companies will pay it all. But that has slowly crept up as well to where it was barely $4,000 a few years ago. This coming year, it's barely $5,000 or more than $5,000. If you're going to a PPO plan, in these states, it's $10,000 or higher in a number of cases if you're going out of network. So those costs have gone up by a lot on the Medicare Advantage end of things. On the prescription drug side of things, what's actually gone up, the copays for generic drugs have come down a lot. If you have a generic drug, there is a reasonable chance that you are paying next to nothing or nothing, which is less than you've paid a few years before, and people are asking about that like crazy. The problem is the cost of the brand drugs have gone up. So if you have like 5 generic drugs and your cost went down from $2 each to nothing, that's great. But one drug that went from $50 copay to a $75 copay makes up for the difference of all of those other drugs. So some of these costs have really gone up, and that is something that I really noticed has changed significantly this year. The companies, even the clients, when they're asking me, they're big on what they have seen on TV and advertisements from friends about how certain costs have gone down, which I think is great. But when we actually sit down to talk to a person about the costs and how they may be how your specific costs may be affecting you, I think that getting a plan so that you can get a free primary care doctor visit is not nearly as important as checking to make sure that your diabetic supplies and your specialists and your pulmonary doctor and breathing supplies are going to remain either steady or as low as possible. I think that needs to be brought into kind of more perspective of what you need to have. And that has turned out to be kind of one of the bigger things this past year that I've had to do, is make sure that people realize that some costs have gone down, and those are going to be the first things placed in front of you when advertised. But a lot of other things have gone up, and it's important to take a look at what those things are. As a matter of fact, it's more important to take a look at what costs have gone up rather than what kind of bargain you're going to get from the company. And that is probably the most important thing that I learned this annual election period. The cost of healthcare is still going up. I know there's a lot of advertising that you saw this year about happy people who have changed their plans and all of a sudden they're paying a whole lot less for certain things. I'm telling you, other costs are there. If you have a Medicare supplement, your premium went up, your costs stayed the same, your medical costs stayed the same most likely. So these are so everything is going to go up. It's just a question of how it affects you and where you are most comfortable with those increases. So as I end all my educational videos, when in doubt, be sure to ask a knowledgeable insurance advisor if that particular plan is right for you. And that is how I'm going to leave this series of videos on what I learned this annual election period. If you haven't seen the other videos, please go back and watch them. I think you'll find them educational or at least hopefully useful. If you've got other questions, please ask us. You can ask us on Facebook. You can ask us on YouTube. You can email us. Our email address is just ask@mymedicareinsider.com. Or if you've got any questions, feel free to give us a call. Our number is plastered all over our website. And yeah, it is right now the end of 2018. If you're watching this in 2019, I hope you had a happy and healthy new year. And we will be back shortly with more content for you. And like I said, give us a call if you got any questions.